Now we're going to start off today in South Africa, where former Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan slammed KPMG after it withdrew a report on the country's tax agency. Now the report was used as evidence in a police probe against him and suddenly led to the removal of senior staff. The South African Revenue Service, or SARS, has been rocked by resignations of several senior executives since Tom Moyane was appointed as commissioner in 2014. Now Moyane clashed with Gordhan when he halted a restructuring plan at SARS during his time as finance minister. Of course, this comes after KPMG said that its conclusions and recommendations in a report for SARS about a unit that allegedly spied on politicians should no longer be relied on. Now, KPMG has said it has offered to repay the $1.7 million fee it received for the work on the report to SARS, or suddenly make a donation to a charity. Now, meanwhile, South Africa's tax agency has also said that it will launch legal proceedings against KPMG, of course, talking about reputational damage caused when the auditor did release those details of a confidential report it had compiled for the tax office. Now, the legal action is another blow for KPMG, which has cleared out its South African leadership en masse after damning findings from an internal investigation into work done for the Guptas, who of course are businessmen, friends of President Jacob Zuma. Take a look.
Instituting legal proceeding against KPMG for reputational damage to SARS, including but not limited to a civil claim. 2. Report KPMG to the relevant statutory audit bodies, both locally and internationally. 3. Report KPMG to the Minister of Finance with the aim of blacklisting KPMG for its unethical, immoral and unlawful behavior. 4. Report KPMG to the Minister of Finance to consider stopping all work currently performed by KPMG in all other departments, as well as any other work in the pipeline, until all the work KPMG conducted for the state have been investigated and reviewed for quality and proper auditing quality and expected standards. 5. Immediately cease any work which KPMG is currently performing for SARS and assess the work KPMG has performed in the last 10 years with the aim to determine whether there was any value for money and whether SARS should demand its money back. And finally, report KPMG to Parliament through SCOPA and SCOF with the aim to investigate the immoral conduct of KPMG and determine the appropriate action.
Well, let's get more on this from Angelo Pisala. He joins us now in Johannesburg. Angelo, as always, you're welcome to the show. Now, give us the implications of KPMG's withdrawal of this report into the country's revenue services. Suddenly, what does it mean for the investigation and the chain of events that were influenced by these findings?
Well, Commissioner Moyane didn't take that KPMG announcement on Friday lying down. Some are suggesting that he didn't really have a choice but to come out with all guns blazing, because the report formed a part of the basis of his purge of several senior SARS officials and the failed attempt at ousting ex-Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. Interestingly, though, Moyane says that the report and its findings aren't flawed, and that suggests to some that he would have to have taken that position. Meanwhile, though, those affected by the retraction of the findings and a portion of the report are saying that they're considering their legal options in terms of legal action. An analyst tells me that it's unlikely that SARS will sue KPMG, because then evidence will have to be led in court, which may not be to the advantage of the tax collection agency or the commissioner. Now,
Angela, one thing we do know is that KPMG is certainly in some hot water now. Besides from SARS, Gordhan has also said he'll be meeting with his lawyers to talk about legal proceedings. So what exactly do you think is the fate of the firm at this point?
Well, there's been fallout for KPMG, there's no doubt. The reputational damage locally has been colossal. Although we aren't aware of any damage to the other business units internationally, we're waiting to see if that plays out there. But several South African-based clients have severed ties immediately. Others, like the dual-listed bank Investec, are waiting for the dust to settle before making a decision themselves. Also, KPMG works with those other government departments and entities which Moyane mentioned, and it's likely that the relationships there will be affected. As it stands, of course, Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts wants KPMG to appear before it and to explain themselves. Meanwhile, KPMG, of course, has a spokesperson who tells me that their new CEO, Namu Dlomu, has reached out to Moyane this morning, saying that they're looking forward to having an opportunity, as they put it, to meet with him to discuss his concerns. Ucha?
Now, Angelo, this is all coming after we had news of other recent scandals, which included British firm Bell Pottinger, now McKinsey as well. Is this going to spur some major changes in government in terms of corruptions and of course, political interference?
Well, Ucha, you'll remember that all of these issues that have shown themselves, or it sort of bubbled to the surface, all related to that Gupta email leak, that hundreds of thousands of emails that went out. So the big question is, we don't know what effect it's going to have on Parliament or in terms of government policy and fight against corruption. Analysts are saying that they aren't seeing any major policy shifts and interventions at the moment. There's a fair amount of talk, of course, both from senior ANC leaders who are on the campaign trail at the moment and in Parliament. But many point to the apparent lack of action by the South African president himself, specifically when it comes to the Public Protector's report into state capture. He indicated several times that a judicial inquiry will be set up. And most recently, he made that comment during his last visit to Parliament just a couple of weeks ago. You'll recall, of course, that the Public Protector's tabled her report late last year, just before leaving office, and yet nothing firm has come to light just yet. Opposition parties, of course, are continuing to fight the good fight in the hope of forcing a change or at least causing the creation of that judicial inquiry. Meanwhile, the ANC candidates continue to fight and use the campaign slogan of fighting corruption. If they come into power, let's see if they actually fulfill that promise of fighting corruption, Ucha.
Well, many thanks for those insights, Angelo. Angelo Pisala joining us there in Johannesburg.